that a power greater than myself. So in part 2, we looked at, or we posed the question, am I already in a relationship with a higher power? And in my opinion, in my experience, in my own addiction experience, and working with many addicted men and women over the however many years, this thing is a higher power. It's a power greater than yourself. It's a dominant energy in your life. Whether you're a religious person or not a religious person, whether you have a faith-based belief system or not, whether you're an atheist or an agnostic or something in between, if you're sitting here watching this video, then I think it's clear that you're in trouble, that you've lost control, that you've maybe tried to stop this thing in your life on numerous occasions without any success, and now maybe for the first time in your life you find yourself in a unique space where you acknowledge that this is bigger than you and that you need help. And this power greater than myself, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, I think, is one of the most key aspects of this whole 12-step program. I think it hinges here. Understanding what this actually means. I should put that on silent. What it actually means. To get your head around this dynamic, that you're already way in over your head, that there's a dominant energy in your life, that there's something that you have no control over, that you're powerless against. If you've really owned step 1, if you've done a thorough step 1 and it's left you hopeless and powerless in the middle of the floor, then you're in a unique space in your life, a unique place in your life where you need to pause and think about this. So step 2, from my experience, doing my own 12-step program, wasn't about finding a higher power. It was about an exchange of higher powers, a transferal of higher powers. The AA and the NA narratives will, this is one of the flaws of the 12-step program as far as I'm concerned, okay, is that they leave this too open and too vague. They're fundamental, they're dogmatic, and there's not a lot of flexibility or room to move around this dynamic. Okay, and because they're all inclusive and they don't want to be seen as supporting one thing over another, or one faith or one religion over another, or whatever, they encourage you to create a higher power of your own understanding. And in my many years working with this, I've heard some really wonderful and weird things. You know, from that chair over there to the ocean, to the mountain, to something vague and airy-fairy that just floats in the air. My problem with this, my problem with this particular narrative is anything I can create, I can control. If I can create a higher power, it's definitely not going to be greater than myself. Because up until I reached this space in my life, I was a loose cannon. I wasn't accountable to anything or anybody. I did what I wanted. I was a rebel. I couldn't see that I was controlled completely and utterly by this thing in my life. Pardon. So it leads to some important questions. Okay, while you're contemplating this in your life. And we look back to part 2, where I've suggested that at some point it's got to dawn on you that everything you believed, and it's a big word, that belief, is more than just in a religious context. It's about your entire worldview. It's about who you see yourself as. It's about how you see yourself in the world. If you go back to the homework I gave you in part 1, I think, the values, morals, and beliefs, what's the difference, or what's the connection? I'm hoping that's helped you. Just hold on, I'll be back in a sec. Back. I didn't have my microphone connected. I hope the sound is picked up. I'll have to check it after the session. Where was I? Talking about the previous slide. At some point it's got to dawn on you that everything you trusted and believed brought you this far. Belief is much more than just in a religious or a spiritual context. It's about everything. Okay? So there's some important questions that are going to come up, should come up. What impact has your higher power had in your life, if you have one, or if you don't have one? What impact has not having a higher power had in your life? Can you trust yourself to create something that's going to have an impact in your life? Or do you need to choose something bigger than yours, really bigger than yourself, that can have some sort of impact in your life? Is continuing with your current belief system going to work? Or is it just going to be a repeat of the same, expecting a different result? And that's also one of the definitions of insanity. One of the definitions they use in this context. The insanity we're going to look at part 4. But is continuing with your current belief system going to work for you? If you start this process and end this process, and in the treatment center where I worked, I would ask this question. If you arrive here with one belief system and leave here with the same belief system, no change happens in that belief system, what's really changed? For those that struggle with the God concept, or a higher power concept, or a spiritual concept, I'm anticipating there's a lot of resistance you're feeling here. Okay? You've got to look at that resistance. Believing in God brought you this far, if you have that faith-based belief system. Not believing in God brought you this far, if you don't have that faith-based belief system. So realistically, is there anything that you can create that's bigger than you? Is there anything in this universe greater than my own ego? Phew, such a great question. Such a great reflection. Is there anything in this universe bigger than your ego? I could speak for myself and I'll say very little, if nothing. My ego is even bigger than God sometimes, I think. If I reflect back on how many times I take control of my life, I get up, I get in the driver's seat and try to start directing my life in the directions I think it needs to go, usually ends in disaster for me. Let me tell you, as a man in recovery, the best I achieved without God and without the 12-step fellowship, without this program, was a jailbird and a junkie. That's the best I ever achieved. I completely blew it. For me, something that I can create is not nearly good enough. Because this is about accountability for me. I need accountability. I need to be accountable and answerable to something that's bigger than my ego. For me, it's God. For you, you're going to need to work that out. But something vague out there, something airy-fairy, something that you can't define, can it deliver? Is it going to deliver? Can it hold you accountable? Will it have an impact? Can it hold you accountable? Can it offer, or can it restore you to sanity? It's critical questions in this section of step work, in this part of your journey. And whether you have a faith-based belief system or don't, whatever that is, whatever your belief system is, you have to examine it. This step demands that you examine it. What needs to change? Self-honesty is critical here. Absolutely critical. What needs to change? What changes do you need to make in your worldview, in your belief system, in your heart, in your thinking, in your attitude? This is critical stuff. Unfortunately, too many pay this lip service because it's much easier that way. And many in the 12-step fellowships and in the rooms, they get sponsors and they do the suggested things. And because this is such a controversial and contentious dynamic, won't get great mentorship or guidance in this area. Because particularly in the A's, AA, NA, CA, whatever, the narratives limit what sponsors can share, can do, can guide, can mentor. The fundamentalism, the dogmatism, is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, I think you understand what I mean. That dogma, that fundamentalism limits where this can go. And that's a mistake. It's one of the flaws of the 12-step fellowship as far as I'm concerned. You don't have to take this as the 11th commandment carved in stone. This is something that you're going to have to work out for yourself. But this is my experience, both in my own life and working with many, many men and women, and watch them struggle around this issue, this dynamic. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves. You've got to pause, you've got to really think about what that means. What is it asking? What does it demand of you? Because there's going to be no restoration to sanity or an offer of sanity if nothing changes. In fact, if nothing changes, you're contributing to the insanity. It's just more insanity that's going to come your way. You're going to go back out into the world and flail around with this massive gaping hole in your soul that used to be your addiction, that used to be the relationship you had with your addiction. Can you see it? Can you hear it? For those that struggle, I urge you, stay focused, stay connected, stick with this, lean into the struggle with this. Find something that can work for you. Sometimes they suggest you can make the fellowship your higher power. And I think that's a good place to start, maybe, because it is something greater than yourself. Very difficult to sit and fool a room full of fellow addicts and alcoholics. Okay? They're going to see right through your BS very quickly. So they can hold you accountable. But that's a temporary measure. It's not going to work forever. You're going to outgrow that at some point. But for now, in the medium, while you wrestle with this dynamic in your life, maybe that's a place to start. I came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity, offer me sanity. Okay? Well, God is too big for me to think about, to contemplate. I don't believe in God, or I've tried the God thing. I've been in church and I've been really hurt in that process. I don't want to go back there, or whatever the resistance is. Okay, we're not going to try and convert you into what we think works, but you do need to make some informed decisions in this stage of your process. Step 3 is coming up. Or section 3 if you're in the EHAB workbook, which is about handing over, which is about making decisions. And what are you going to hand? What are you going to hand over to? What are you going to trust? Something vague and airy-fairy? I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it can deliver. It certainly can't hold you accountable. And anything I can create, I can control. That's definitely not going to work for me. I'm too cunning. My ego's too big. I am too self-centered, too selfish, too self-willed, too self-driven to place my faith and trust anything that I can create. That's just never going to work for me. Let's leave it there. You've got a lot to think about. I'm going to pause the video now, and I will see you guys in part 4, insanity, or sanity, sorry. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So we're going to go look at that sanity, by implication insanity, a bit more. We'll unpack that a bit. And then you guys will be ready for step 3. See you then.